Good morning, this is Luke with Austin's Appliance Service. I was just wanting to make a video this morning. We're going to talk about soap and the different issues that overuse can cause. But the first thing I wanted to address was a couple corrections from the first couple videos. The first video, talking about people that have been taken advantage of and scams. That first, the one in there that speaks of the elderly lady that they charge her $100 laptop diagnostic fee. The reason that was so plainly a scam was that in that time when they were using laptops to plug into these ports, that was only possible with appliances that had electronic controls. Well, this thing was a simple top mount refrigerator that had the old type, what was called a hydraulic control. It was just a contact. There was physically no port to plug into. So this national chain type repair shop charged her for something that was an absolute impossibility. It was 100% a lie. So that's why I wanted to correct that, just so you guys kind of understood why I knew that was a scam. And then on the second video, I was saying how I don't work on LG, and yet I also know LG refrigerators have a high failure rate, and the two don't really match. And so I wanted to address that too. So I do still see the LG refrigerator under the Kenmore line. That's why I'm also leery of sending people to Kenmore these days, because Kenmore had a good name, but back when they had a good name, they were using almost exclusively Whirlpool. Post 2010, I would say, that didn't hold as true. They were kind of a mixed bag. They still are, is what's out there. One thing could be a Whirlpool, the next an LG, the next a Samsung, the next a Frigidaire. So the Sears Kenmore refrigerators there's a big chunk of them, and they might still be using them, that are LG built refrigerators. And so that's why I have a history. I still have somewhat of a working knowledge and history with, I know what's going on in the LG refrigeration line because I still see it. But the things but that's just corrections for the videos for the last couple days. But anyways, what I wanted to talk about today was soap, detergents, and I could make a dozen videos on soap and oversudsing and those kinds of things, the different effects of oversudsing. But just to touch on soap, the first thing people need to understand is, and this is going to sound crazy, soap doesn't clean anything. The water does. Soap is not actually causing anything to become cleaner. And that's kind of the place to start, because even before I started doing this work, if it's dirtier, it needs more soap. And that's not the case at all. What we really need to get a hold of and understand is the water cleans. The water is doing the cleaning. And the purpose of the soap is to break down the viscosity of the water. That is a fancy word for density. It makes the water, in plain terms, it makes the water slippery. It helps it to penetrate into the fibers of the clothes or into the grains of the dishes. But you need to understand, first of all, that the water is what cleans, not the soap. Yes, it helps the water clean. And if we get the mixture right, it helps it clean. But the soap itself is not doing any cleaning. It's the water. And understanding that, now we understand, or at least get a better idea, if we take the process of breaking down the viscosity of the water too far, or in other words, turning all the water into bubbles, we kind of understand what all these oversudsing issues can cause. One of the biggest things it causes is washability issues. You get too much soap in your washer, you get too much soap in your dishwasher, you can expect it's not going to clean right. The reason being is we've essentially taken all the water, turned it over to bubbles. There's no more density left in the water. It's all just slippery foam. And the impellers in the wash motor of your dishwasher, they can't create any pressure with foam. So you're not knocking anything off the dish. In your washer, what's going to happen is, if you are using the right amount of soap, there should not be soap left in your clothes at the end of the cycle. What you will find is, when there's oversudsing present, your clothes are going to hold excess soap, excess detergent. And people that deal with soap sensitivities, They spend extra money to buy a special soap so they don't have the soap sensitivity. But if they just knew that if they used less soap, there wouldn't be soap left in their clothes, they wouldn't have the sensitivities, they wouldn't have to spend the extra money on the soap. So, there's a lot of things that it can create in a washer as far as just not washing well. Again, because we're leaving all that excess suds in the fibers of the clothes. And then in the dishwasher, again, we turn everything over to suds, no pressure, but then also, and you guys will, anybody that's over suds, they'll know it because they're Tupperware, they're glassware, anything like that, it's going to be cloudy. 99% of the time, it's the soap. There's such a thing called etching. Everybody wants to blame etching for everything. Etching is such a rare chemical reaction with the water and the silverware, and it's bluing. It's not the white cloudy stuff. And not only that, in 23 years of doing this, I don't think I've ever actually seen a case of etching. A lot of people try to blame it on etching, but if you can take the dish, put it under water, scrub it with your hand, and that film comes off, that's soap. Another thing soap can do is create leaks. The reason being is that if we're breaking down the viscosity or the density of the water, we can take that process so far that the seals can't hold the water. So it comes out on the floor. You're going to particularly see this in dishwashers and front load washers. A top load washer, the water can't really get to any place to come out. But on a front load washer, the water's laying right up on the door and the seal. Dishwasher, same thing, seal in the door, and there's contact with the water, it can leak. And so we break down the viscosity or the density of the water to the place where the seals can't contain the water. A third thing that soap can do, well, particularly oversudsing. These scenarios are all oversudsing because if we're getting the amount right, we shouldn't have these issues. The other thing is odors. My washer stinks, my dishwasher stinks. And usually there must be something backing up in the plumbing, or my garbage disposal is backing up into the dishwasher. 90% of the time, that's not the case. It's almost always leftover soap. To have odor, you have to have stagnant water and available bacteria. Well, every appliance ever made cannot completely eliminate stagnant water. You can't pump out that last couple inches of water. You don't see it, but it's there. It's down in the sump assembly. It's down in the drain pump. There's water in your washer and dishwasher all the time. You cannot eliminate stagnant water. But if you eliminate the available bacteria, it won't stink. But detergents, soaps, they're full of natural bacteria. They are the best available source of bacteria. So if we oversuds, and if we have soap left over at the end of the cycle, that is the most readily available bacteria, and it will stink. It will have a mildew smell. It'll have a really bad odor. And again, there's something wrong with my dishwasher. My disposal must be backing up into the dishwasher. My washer must not be draining out right. It's not that. It's that there is leftover soap. And this is a very common problem. Very common problem because everything's going to the packets and the pods and the tablets, and everybody just assumes that if this is how they packaged it, it must be the right amount for my washer or my dishwasher. Most times it's not. Especially with any of this newer stuff, it's all being marketed as high efficiency. So if it's high efficiency, we're using less water is really, when you boil that down, that means I use less water. Okay, but the soap concentrations keep going up, and I think there's some marketing involved in that. We're trying to take in as broad a market as possible. So we're putting enough soap in these pods and packets that I can use it in, say, a dishwasher of 30 years ago or a washer of 30 years ago. But if they'll work in those, there's a problem because there's 5 times the water usage in those old appliances. Not that was a bad thing. But, so if you take that amount of soap and you put it into the water usage of the washers and dishwashers of today, guaranteed it's too much soap. It's always too much soap. So a lot of the pre-measured stuff and anything that's been built in the last 10, 15 years, it's typically not a good idea. Very common that eventually you're going to run into oversudsing problems. So what is the right amount? Well, the big thing is we got to understand is there is a right amount of soap to your water. If you've got X amount of water, you need X amount of soap, and that's it. And if I throw in dirtier clothes, putting in extra soap in the same amount of water is not helping it clean any better. It's actually doing the opposite. It's a hindrance to the cleaning process. So we just need to find the right amount of soap to our water. Usually how you find that, first of all, I usually tell people, find something you can measure and start with a tablespoon. And usually that's all you're ever going to need. You don't need you don't need a capful. You don't even need the bottom line on the cap, because I'm telling you that's still too much. Usually about a tablespoon's a place to start. With a dishwasher, what I like to do is let them run 5-10 minutes, open the door. And what you're looking for is a few bubbles on top of the water, but you do not want to see a blanket of suds. If you cannot see the surface of the water, you have too much soap. So you cut that. In your washer, the biggest problem is, like, especially with the front loaders, is that the soap is hidden. Nobody realizes they're oversudsing because they always run their washer with soap, or they're with clothes. The clothes are burying the soap. So best way to find out with your washer usually is turn on your washer to a hot water cycle, but don't put clothes in it. What's going to happen is the hot water is going to bring up any buildup, any excess soap, and you're going to see it in the water. If you can make suds in the water without adding soap, you are oversudsing because there's a soap buildup in the tub. And so just some thoughts on soap, different things, and we could keep going. There's a lot of things, but those are the big things with soap. Is people think that if it's dirtier, they need more soap. That's not the case. There is a right amount of soap to the water, and that's it. If I've got 1 gallon of water, I need 1 gallon's worth of, or effective amount of soap, and that's it. Whatever works for 1 gallon of water of the soap you have, that's all you need, and that's all you ever need. And probably 95% or better of the houses I walk into, they are using too much soap. Now, sometimes it shows up quicker than others. Sometimes it isn't causing the issues because it's not a major oversudsing. But almost all of them I walk into are using too much. I mean, we grew up on a capful. Everybody uses a capful. Well, that washer 30 years ago used 20, 30 gallons per fill. That capful was fine in 20 or 30 gallons. Then that's per fill. What you've got today is stuff that's filling with maybe 5 gallons on some of these top load washers, maybe less. And you're not reducing the amount. So if this was 30 gallons worth of soap and you're still throwing in a capful into 5 gallons of water, you've got too much soap. Dishwasher, same thing. Way more water usage previously, has been reduced quite a bit, but you don't see the cup sizes on the doors changing sizes. They're still the same size they've ever been, and a lot of people think, I fill the cup. No, it's not the case. Tablespoon. Start with a tablespoon, whether it's your washer or your dishwasher. And truth be told, your washer and your dishwasher will wash better without soap than with too much soap. They'll still wash with water. The soap is there to help it. And if we actually get the mixture right, it will add to the washing ability of that appliance. But if you take that process too far, you're actually hindering the washing. And you will create leaks and odors and all sorts of stuff. So, if you guys have questions, leave questions in the comments here. I also upload these videos to YouTube now. Put some questions in the comments there. It'll help me kind of keep these videos rolling. And also I know that talking, I don't have the ability to go back and edit what I said. When I write things out, I can go, oh, I missed this, or I didn't say that, or I didn't address this thing. So that's going to be the big thing with these videos. I'm going to need your input. I'm going to need to know, hey, what about this? You missed that, or I misunderstood this thing. So just make sure that you do leave a comment. But anyways, I'm going to get to work, and you guys have a good day.